Hey everyone, this is Sherman from premadepixels.com, and we are going to be creating an album cover design inside of Photoshop. So this is the template that we're going to be creating, and I have a similar template, and that's available on my website for sale. But I'm going to show you how to create that template right here inside of Photoshop for all of you guys. So I hope you enjoy it. Let's get into the specifics first. What is the album cover size? So I'm going to go to image size, a width of 3000, a height of 3000, and a resolution of 150. That's what I've chosen. I'll click OK. And now let's add some design elements. So I'm going to create a red box to start with. Something like this. It's black in color. That's because we need to double click and select, open the color picker and select this nice bright red. Then we'll want to name it box. Right click and convert your box layer to a smart object and go over to filter, noise, median, and let the radius be around 15, or let's do 20, just so we have those rounded corners. And the reason I did convert this into a smart object is because what happens if I kind of wake up the next morning and say, you know, this is not looking too good. I would like the box to be just have sharp edges instead of rounded edges. So all I need to do is just uncheck the median filter here, and I've got those sharp edges like a perfect, almost a perfect square. But then again, in the afternoon my client says, you know, the rounded edges looked a little better. So I just simply need to go back to median and turn on the median smart filter. Otherwise I would have to have a separate layer, a separate box layer, one with the sharp edges and one with the rounded edges. Now I don't want to clutter my layers panel too much, so this is the best way to do it. So convert it into a smart object, select and use a median filter to round off those edges, and you should be good to go. So once I've done that, make sure you want to center your box. So you select the entire canvas, make sure your box is selected, and in the alignment options here, just select align horizontal centers, and you can see it's perfectly centered on my document here, on my Photoshop file here. So with that done, the second thing I would want to do is add an outer glow to the box, an outer and an inner glow. So right click, select blending options, then we'll add our outer glow. So my outer glow is going to be a red or a darker orange, or somewhere close to in between a red and an orange, something like that. My blend mode is linear dodge add, and my size is 90, but you can always bring that down. You don't have to be so particular with your values here. If it's 85, it can be 90, it can be 95. It's not going to make that much of a difference. So you don't have to be by the book and do exactly what a particular designer has done. You can always experiment by playing around with the sliders on your own. So I'm happy with this outer glow. Then I'll go over to inner glow, and by default I've already got this pinkish color here. I'm happy with that. My settings are, my opacity is 33, so let's just change it to 30, just to show you that even if you enter these random values somewhere close to what it was, will not affect the design that much. So you want to experiment. And then my size is 169. See, it's random. If I was by the book, I'd probably have 150, 175, or rounded off numbers, but this is absolutely random. I just want you to know that you don't have to be particular with all these values. Click OK. I'm happy with that. And then I think I may want to bring the box a little lower, somewhere like that. And then I will create those vertical bars that you saw in the design. So I'm going to go over to my toolbar, select the rectangle tool and then drag from the top to the bottom to have this vertical shape here, something like that. It's black in color, but we are going to make that an orange, nice orange, something like that. Maybe make it a little broader. And as always, name your layers. Call this vertical bar, right click and convert to smart object and duplicate. So the way I like to duplicate is press Alt on the keyboard with your first layer, that's the layer you want to duplicate, have that selected. In this case it's vertical bar, and just drag across the canvas. It's much easier than right clicking and selecting duplicate layer. So I prefer using shortcuts as much as possible, and I encourage you to do so as well. So name this vertical bar right, and now let's add some blurs to it. Let's add some Gaussian blurs to the vertical bars. Something like, say, around 6 pixels is fine, just so it's not too sharp and has these nice edges, these nice blurred of edges. And the same thing I'll do with the vertical bar right. Filter, Gaussian blur, click OK. Now you can see at the top over here you're getting that it looks a little bit odd here, so you want to transform, Control to Command T, and just increase the height beyond the canvas, so something like that. Then what I did was I added some glows manually. So I created a new layer. I'll call these orange glows, and then you want to select an orange, something like that. Make sure your brush tool is selected, click B on the keyboard, bring down your size a bit, something maybe somewhere like that. And I've got 1040 here. As you can see, it's random again. Your flow should be somewhere around the 10 to 15 mark, and make sure your blending mode is linear dodge, and then start painting over the vertical bar. You can see you're getting this nice interaction of glows. It looks pretty cool, it looks nice and bright. That's exactly what we want. I'll do the same thing for the vertical bar right on the same layer. That looks fine. I'm pretty happy with that. Then I'll probably want to start adding my text. I'm going to call it shimmer. I want to use Nexa, I think Nexa black, or maybe Nexa bold, and I don't want my tracking to be 760. That's way too much. I'm just going to make it the default, set it to 0, something like that. Make my text color white like that, and increase the size so it almost fills up the breadth of the box here. And now bring down the opacity to around something like 20. That works fine. And then duplicate. So with your shimmer layer selected, duplicate your text layer like so. And this time we are going to be getting rid of the fill here and bring up the opacity to 100, and we're going to be adding a stroke to this. So all I did was I double clicked on the text layer. You can also right click, blending options, and then go to stroke, and you can see we've got that subtle stroke here. So I'll make the opacity maybe around 30, something like that. That's fine. And then duplicate it all the way till it kind of fits the box. I'm happy with that. And the next thing I did was grouped all my text layers here, and I called it text. Being organized is very important, because once you have more than 20 to 30 layers, or maybe even more than that. I mean, if you have well named layers, it'll be easy to find and it'll save you a lot of time. So get into the habit of grouping and naming your layers. Then I added an adjustment layer, a hue saturation adjustment layer. Drag your slider to the left till you get this bluish kind of purplish color going on, and then you can see your gradient, your mask is selected here. And if black and white is your foreground color, if it isn't, just press D on the keyboard and it'll be set to black and white, D and X, whichever you want, and then drag across the mask with your gradient tool selected. So press G on your keyboard, and with this mask selected, just drag from left to right. But see, on my gradient at the top, I've got yellow here, so I want to select my default gradient here. That's black and white, and drag from left to right, something like that. That looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. And then I will call this just hue saturation, and I'll add in our model. So I went over to Unsplash, I typed in male model, and I got this image. So I'm going to download the image, and our image is downloaded. I'll open this image inside of Photoshop, and then I'll go over to my quick select tool or your magic wand, and then select this button here at the top that says select subject. And then with your model selected, just press Ctrl or Command J, and that looks pretty good. But you can see here at the bottom, just near his arm, that you've got this background over here. That's the default background that the model was against. Just take your eraser tool and just erase that portion off. Then again, like I said, you don't have to be super particular. In case of this tutorial, I'm not going to be very particular about this. And once that's done, if you're doing this for a client and if you're getting paid for it, then yes, definitely you want to take a little more time with your selections. But for the sake of this tutorial, you get the idea, and I don't want to waste too much of time. So that looks pretty okay. Not the best selection, but will do for this tutorial. Grab your model and place in our document here, our PSD template here. Increase the size of the model, something like that. Looks pretty good. And now let's name the layer model. Let's add a color balance adjustment layer so that we can blend the model in a bit better. Where is my color balance? There it is. And clip it. Right click and select create clipping mask. So now the effects are only going to be applied to the model. So with my color balance opened out, let me close these layers so you get a little better view. And I'll drag this first slider towards the red there, like so, and the yellow towards the blue, something like that, just so he blends a little better. Then I will add a curves adjustment layer, and right click and select create clipping mask. And with the curves adjustment layer, you want to bring down the highlights there, something like that. The overall contrast you want to bring down a bit, something like that, just so he blends a little better. Now that's done. And what you could also do is manually add some glows or some lighting. Just create a new layer, call this lighting on model, and you don't necessarily actually have to make this a clipping mask here. You can have this affect the entire canvas here. So with that named, I'm just going to select maybe this, something like that, a yellowish color. Make sure your blend mode is either screen or linear dodge. and press B to bring up your brush and then start painting. Something like that. Maybe if we go for a soft light and our flow, bring up our flow a little bit. Yeah, something like that. So we have the light on the left affecting his left side, so that kind of adds to the realism. And on the right side you just select a bluish color and then do the same thing and start painting. As you can see, the light is kind of affecting the right side here, like that. Starting to look really good. Then I'll add a texture to this entire document here, to this Photoshop document. Create a new layer, call this noise. By the name of the layer you can already tell which filter I'm going to be using, and yes, you guessed it, that's the noise filter. So press Shift and F5 to bring up the fill dialog box. Contents will be 50% gray. Go over to filter, noise, add noise, and basically choose any value you like. The choice is yours. Click OK, and once our noise layer is selected, change the blending mode to soft light and bring the opacity to around 30. So you can see we've added that grain, and that grain is what we want. Then we'll add an overall adjustment layer that will be a gradient map, and we're going to be using some of the legacy gradients. That's the legacy default gradients, and we're going to be choosing this violet and orange here. And once we've chosen it, we'll change our blend mode to soft light and then bring the opacity down to about somewhere around 35. That should be fine. That doesn't look too bad at all. And let's add a curves adjustment layer again, just to make the blacks a little gray, something like that. Looks pretty good. Then we want to group all these layers, these 4 layers, the curves, the gradient map, the noise, and the lighting. Let's just call it adjustments. You could call it whatever you want. Group your model layer and call it model. And then let's add some lighting, on a light leak on the model here. So to do that, again you create a new layer, call it light leak, and we want to make that leak a nice yellow, a bright yellow. What I did was I just sampled a color here, a nice bright yellow. Clicked on OK, and then make sure you make a selection out of the vertical bar. Press the command key on your keyboard and click, and you'll get a selection of that particular layer. And now we'll go up to a gradient. Press G on your keyboard, and I selected this nice bright yellow here. Remember, we did that when we selected it, and we basically sampled the color here. So that's already in my foreground color here. So when you press G on your keyboard, you should see that yellow is already by default in your gradient editor here. So we don't want any white, we want it to be transparent. So we'll bring the opacity to 0 and click OK. And now we'll go to our light leak layer and we'll just drag a gradient from bottom to top, something like that. Looks pretty good. We won't do anything on the right hand side with the vertical bar on the right, because we want to make this a little random. We don't want it to look symmetrically perfect. And yeah, so once I've done that, we'll start adding a little random text, and I'm going to call this new artist. And the font that I've chosen is static bold, and my font color is going to be white. Bring the size down. Then you could actually write whatever you want. There's enough space. You could duplicate the layer and then type maybe your website name. Mine is premadepixels.com. If this is for iTunes or Spotify, you want to include those logos as well, so we'll do that. Center it. That's fine. And then let's add some text as to what this album is about. So we'll call this Soundscapes. Or actually, better still, we'll call this Hot Male Vocals. Makes more sense actually. Center it and then bring the size down really small. Place that there, and then maybe add a little more text. Hot Male Vocals and samples, for the lack of better text. Center it. That's fine. And then let's go to the internet and grab some iTunes logo, and this is fine. I'll copy this, I'll paste it in, and let's invert it because this is a black background. We want our iTunes logo to be white, so Control or Command I, and then to get rid of all the black, remember the magic, go to screen. So something like that. So maybe place it right here, iTunes, and let's go for Spotify logo, and again take a black and white, just saves you a little time here. Copy the image, paste it in. It's already a PNG, so just invert the image. Control or Command I, that inverts it. That should do. So once we have these, the text at the top, see, I'm just grouping this and calling it, let's call it logos. Now let's center this vertically. Let's all these logos and my website here. So we'll select these layers, the Spotify, the iTunes, and my website premadepixels.com, and let's distribute it like this. Yeah. So once we've done that, we've distributed equally across this canvas. We'll select all and center it vertically. So we've got our logos perfectly centered, and maybe bring down the opacity to about 60, something like that. That should work fine. And what are we missing? I think we are missing a couple of textures here. So we have a noise there. Now we'll add a starfield texture, and we'll do that by creating a new layer, call it starfield. This is to add like little random white spots across the screen and across this design. So Shift F5, 50% gray, just like we did with noise. We add the noise, and then we can go to filter, and we'll go to minimum, and you can see we've got this starfield logo here. I mean starfield effect here. Then we can go to image and threshold and kind of minimize the amount of stars you want in the sky. Click OK once you're done with that, and then select screen, and now you can see we got these little white specks in the design. And like always, you can add little finer details. You can add a couple of logos at the bottom. You see we've got some empty spaces here at the bottom. You can do that. You can play around further with the design, and in all honesty, I think this looks pretty good, and I'm very happy with the way it turned out. I thank you for watching this video, and I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you learned a lot. and I trust you're going to subscribe to the channel. I trust you're going to like, and you're also going to comment and tell me and what you liked about this video, and I'll be happy to take requests for further tutorials. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to having you in the next videos. God bless.